Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, and welcome to the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues episode number 150. As you're logging in, if you guys would be kind enough to say where you're logging in from, hit the like button and feel free to continue doing so throughout the dialogue. If you're catching the final edit video over on the YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And if you enjoy my work and you'd like to support the program, visit jkdrebel.com, click on the Rebel Gear link, and check out what we offer. But of course, the best thing you can do is to share this video and spread the word about the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues. So my dialogue partner today is making his second appearance. And a couple of weeks ago, on one of our famous or infamous Facebook discussions, something that he said attracted my attention. So I thought it would be fun to have him back on so that we could both run our mouths about Jeet Kune Do. All right, so with that, Zane Isaacs, welcome back to the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues.
Thank you, sir. I don't remember now what I said, but I'm ready for it, whatever it is. Hey, I've got a question for you though, Dwight. What are those red hats going to say when you get those made? What are they going to say? Are they going to say "Make it great again" or "Keep it great"?
No, they'll probably say "Keep Jeet Kune Do great."
Right.
Because as that prolonged afterthought, I was like, yeah, that probably was a better. What they will never say is "Build Jeet Kune Do better back." Whatever that slogan is. I mean, come on. Look, a lot of alliteration is sometimes good, but "build better back," that was a feeble attempt at a political slogan. I'm sorry. Right. I can't. I'm not going to use that one. Right. So okay. So you say you don't remember what you said, but
I can only imagine. It came out of my mouth. So.
Yeah. But I made a note of it because I remember one thing I remember is that you and I ended up having a very similar thought about it. The thing I don't remember though is which one. So I'll just throw it at you. And we'll get into it that way. So let's do this one. Jeet Kune Do, an art or a philosophy?
You know, I'm not good at this stuff, Dwight. Jeet Kune Do, a simple, direct, and non-classical way of hurting other people when you need to. That's where I'm at with it. An art or a philosophy, I don't know.
I don't agree with you. I don't think that's what you think at all.
No, you're probably right. You might know better what I think than I do. You know, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about what I think or what I say for that matter. An art or a philosophy. I would have to say for me, I would have to say an art. I'm just because the philosophical stuff just never struck me.
Okay.
All of the philosophical stuff just never struck me. The deeper I get into it, the more I read into it, the less I seem to know or figure out.
Okay.
But there is some real art to expressing the human body, you know. So,
okay. See, you know what I'm reminded of earlier today. You know who? Do you know who? Okay, which one? Not Brett. Gosh, now I forget his name. Anyhow, it's not Brett Weinstein. It's his brother.
I know there's Brett and
what's his brother's name?
If you hadn't said it, I'd tell you.
Yeah, he's like the mathematician guy.
And right? It's Weinstein.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Weinstein.
Yeah.
Weinstein is that other character.
Is that other guy?
We don't like that guy. Weinstein. And I remember that because Stein, you know, it's something you drink alcohol out of or whatever. So Weinstein, that's how I remember
it. You do have your connections, don't you? You do have your mental connections.
Once in a
Okay,
while.
so he was recently on with another guy named
Eric,
Eric. Thanks, Bill
thank you, Bill.
Matucci. Yes, he was on with Lex Friedman, and there's a
Hmm.
little clip, and they were discussing Joe Rogan, right? And what Eric was saying is that Joe um, positions himself as a meathead. You know,
Yeah,
I'm a comedian, or whatever. When you said that just now about, the art and the philosophy thing, that to me, that's what I picked up on. You might not consider yourself to have a philosophical approach to it, but I think you do, because I think that in running a school, you have had to think long and hard about what you're doing, what you're putting out there. And to me, that is philosophy in action. Does that make sense?
sure. Yeah, philosophy. Yeah, I suppose you'd be right. I mean, I think of it. If I were to put it into words, I'd probably use something like strategy or
Mhm.
something like that. But you're splitting hairs there. So
See,
I agree. There's a philosophy. There certainly is a philosophy, a methodology
yeah,
to what I do, how I do it,
yeah,
etc. So
yeah,
sure.
exactly, exactly. See, and I think that that's one of the unique characteristics of Jeet Kune Do, that more often than not, I think, if you talk about philosophy, people might think about something esoteric and non-tangible, but I think that Jeet Kune Do is a practical philosophy, an active philosophy, you see, and not something uh, high-minded, but not something ethereal.
Certainly, the way it was taught to me,
Okay.
and the way I integrate it into what I'm doing, the way I practiced it, the way I taught it for years. Certainly, it's much more about doing with purposefulness, than it is about. And it doesn't seem to be that way with everybody. I heard you. Let's see. I just listened to it today. Um, the Make Jeet Kune Do Great Again podcast, where you talked about doers and talkers.
Uh-huh.
Um, and there's a lot of and hey, God love them, good for them. But there's a lot of talkers out there who you know are fond of telling everyone else that they don't understand JKD and stuff like this. We just um, I just got into this discussion with a gentleman not too long ago about whether or not I understood what JKD was or whatever. And my answer is always that's certainly not. I don't understand what JKD is. I just punch stuff, man. I don't know.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
that
whatever.
is, yeah, that is always that's I think sometimes that's always a good approach. I I don't know if I probably never told you this story, but many years ago, when we first put a phone in my first warehouse, um, I got a phone call, and I ended up on the phone probably with this guy probably about an hour. And he was just letting me know how much he knew,
Oh, good.
right? It was an interesting phone call. And I mean, but I had just gotten the phone in the warehouse, so it was kind of a unique situation. So I was like, anybody who calls, I'm going to talk Jeet Kune Do with them, right?
Right.
And this guy happened to call to let me know how much he knew that I didn't know, and what have you. Refresh everybody's mind on your Jeet Kune Do background, because I mean I know about Rodney Hitchcock and Ted Wong and what have you, but refresh everybody's memory.
Well, my instructor is Rodney Hitchcock. His main instructor was Ted Wong. By and large, 95+% of his JKD knowledge and practice, what have you, came from the Ted Wong lineage. He was an early attender of some Dan Inosanto seminars, so he got exposed to that as well. But
Yeah, because I remember in one of the Facebook things, somebody described, like, I don't know if they were describing a seminar or if they were describing a classroom setting or something, but you said, and it had to do with, you know, a blend of training empty hands and weaponry and whatever. And you said, well, that sounds just like what I used to do. Do you remember that one?
no,
No?
no. But early on in our training, before early on in our training, before MMA was a household name, we trained very much MMA like, and I don't mean UFC like. I mean truly mixed martial arts, stick and knife, and hey, throw me up against this wall and choke me, and let's figure out how to deal with that. You know, very much self-defense oriented stuff. Rodney's a black. I'm pretty sure he's a black belt in Kempo. He is. He's a black belt in Kempo. So you know that time kind of self-defense stuff was, you know, his bread and butter back before he got involved heavily in JKD. So yeah, you know, we always were heavily informed and influenced by what Ted Wong was doing and what he was teaching, and really tried to make everything else, the stick and knife, the grappling, etc., tried to apply his very scientific kind of approach to it, and kind of filter everything through that.
Yeah.
So it kind of informed our training. I keep saying our, like I was doing the teaching, he was doing the teaching, okay? But I've been here a long time, okay?
Okay.
So forgive me. Right?
No.
It seemed to
You're
inform
allowed.
his way of teaching heavily. So, and the longer he trained with Ted Wong, the more he seemed to integrate. He was careful. He didn't want to take 2 or 3 seminars worth of knowledge and change his entire system to something that he didn't quite fully understand yet. There were, you know, it seemed to me like at the time that, but the more understanding he gained, the more hours he got, the more training he did, the more questions we asked, etc., the more and more our training began to look like Ted Wong and his general strategy, philosophy, what have you.
Yeah. Hey, as somebody who runs a professional martial arts school, the term, the phrase MMA, mixed martial arts, what is the connotation or the context in which it's being used now out there in the real world?
I mean, it's generally associated with fighters and fight teams and, you know, mixed martial arts. It's generally associated with people who want to end up in the UFC or whatever. It's certainly not what I mean by it. You know, I run an MMA gym.
Right.
0 fighters in my MMA gym. I've turned away dozens of them.
But now, okay, so now why use the name Championship MMA?
Modern martial arts.
Yes.
Modern martial. You remember that? Modern martial arts.
Right.
And it is a mixed martial arts approach. I have began to be very heavily informed by our experience in teaching fighters, and the training methodology, right? Rather than I don't want to get into that, but being very fit, training very hard, doing lots of sparring, a lot of pressure testing, you know, which is more of a sport way of training. So whether you're dealing with rules or no rules, weapons or no weapons, that's kind of the the methodology that we've always kind of
So,
leaned.
yeah, now, okay. One of the other discussions that we had was about Jeet Kune Do's evolution. So it seems to me, verify this for me, it seems to me that you have come to discover that that approach that you just mentioned about being very fit, about pressure tested and what have you, is that one of, is that what you consider one of Jeet Kune Do's greatest contributions?
I consider it one of you're baiting me. You don't know you're baiting me, but
No,
you're baiting me.
no.
It is, yes, it is, Dwight. It is one of
I'm sorry,
JKD's greatest contributions. It's one of, yeah, it is. It's one of JKD's greatest contributions. Absolutely. Bruce Lee was very, very into being fit to fight. And and
I don't know what it is I'm doing to you, man, but
and and he was informed by a competition of sorts that he was in. You know, he was informed about this idea of being much more fit than he was at the time. He thought he was fit
yeah,
to fight when he fought Wong Jack Man.
yeah.
And is that the guy's name, Wong Jack Man?
Yep, you got it.
And I don't think I've ever said it out loud. And you know, so he pressure tested it for real and figured out, you know, that he wasn't quite in the shape that he thought he was in, and so he went to work fixing that.
Now, isn't that interesting? Because the MMA meatheads, right? The MMA meatheads go, they deride Bruce Lee because he has no fight record.
Right.
You know, I guess it's because they don't have the understanding that somebody like you has about that contribution.
It's a worthy contribution, and you know I'm a contrarian, so I argue with JKD people that Bruce Lee was not a high level competitor, and thusly not all of the answers are going to be found in JKD. He was a young man when he died, and he didn't have the competition experience, and he also, you know, the general level of fight sport at the time was very, very low. He wasn't impressed with it,
right?
Generally speaking,
right.
And you know, if you watch footage back then, you know, look, you're talking about. I'm talking crap here about guys like Joe Louis and people like that who could probably jump up from the grave and break my neck right now, but you know, it was pretty rudimentary, the level of movement and stuff like that you saw back then in competition. So what I'm saying is not that Bruce Lee stinks or that he was no good. What I'm saying is that he undoubtedly would have gotten so much better in terms of skill, knowledge, what he was exposed to, and what JKD or whatever he called what he did,
right,
as time went on, would have been.
Okay, let me as they say on the TVs. Let me push back on that a little.
Yes.
When you say rudimentary, you mean compared to today's level of movement, not back then.
No, not at all. Back then, I mean, that was the highest. That was the best you could get. Joe Louis, Chuck Norris, Bill Superfoot Wallace, Mike Stone, all those guys. You know,
okay. Have you seen now? Now I don't remember the name, but there's a black guy. Somebody put up a clip of this black guy who, what was his name? I didn't think that this would come up, and if you haven't seen the clip, I'll send it to you when we're done. But it's a black guy who trained with, do you remember the name? Are you old enough to remember the name Demetrius Havanas?
No.
Oh, okay.
Who was that fella?
Okay, well, so he was one of the top-rated American karate competitors. So, but
At that time?
yes, so
Okay.
so this is back in the era of Benny the Jet Urquidez and those people, right? So there's this one guy. I'd love to go to Facebook and pull it up, but sometimes if I pull up another tab, it starts to affect the
Things get crazy.
yeah, you know. So I'll send it to you. But anybody who's listening in and has seen the clip, this guy's movement was incredible. And
Right.
and I think we're talking the 1970s,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when you said I wondered if you were comparing back then with today, or if you were just thinking.
Well, come to think of it, I mean, in martial arts competition, karate competition back then, I mean, if you just compare it to, and of course that's an outlier. I was going to say compare it to Muhammad Ali, but if you compare everybody to Muhammad Ali back then,
You're in trouble.
still though, I think most anyone would find that boxers probably moved a bit better back then. I don't think boxing and the idea of footwork had been fully explored and integrated into sport karate and things like that at that time as much as they did. Even when you compare the gentleman that I mentioned to like Benny the Jet, who came along just a few years later and seemed to move much better.
Yeah, I mean, and no, because I've seen some of the clips of people who really got into the boxing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of the early American kickboxers who really developed. I mean, even Bill Wallace.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Even Bill Wallace, and then Joe Louis, of course. Right. So I've always found it interesting that that people cannot think deeply about Bruce Lee's contribution, and so they leave it at the surface level of, well, he has no fight record, so he's not to be regarded in any way. But I want to ask you about this as well. The people who will rush to defend Bruce Lee and say that Bruce Lee would have beaten anybody in his weight class, or maybe even outside his weight class in the UFC. What's going on in their minds?
Hero worship, 100% hero worship. Look, a prime Bruce Lee who had been exposed to the information that he needed in order to get ready for that situation. Mm-hmm. That's a completely different Bruce Lee than the Bruce Lee that we're, than the Bruce Lee that we're talking about when he died, which is was a 33-year-old man who just hadn't been exposed to enough yet to beat a TJ Dillashaw or a I don't know if you know any of these names, but any of these guys in the 135, 145 pound weight class that I imagine Bruce Lee would be fighting in, those guys would just, no, they'd demolish him. I mean, no disrespect, but they would, you see people who have little knowledge of grappling you're just not going to make it in the UFC. It's too difficult to land. If you can wrestle and defend takedowns, it's much easier to commit to striking than if you don't understand the level changes and don't understand the distance at which people can shoot for takedowns and the timing and stuff like that. It's just totally different.
Have you ever gotten involved in any of the Bruce Lee and grappling discussions?
I've talked about it before. I don't know if I've been a part of these discussions that you're talking about. I've discussed it before. I'm interested in the idea that he eventually would have gotten more interested in grappling and would have really deepened his knowledge in that. I've talked to you about that before. I feel like he would have been an early adopter of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and wrestling and stuff like that if he'd had a little bit more exposure to it, or continued to expose himself to it, because he began to expose himself to it before he died, you know. And if there was no merit to it, well, he would have cast it aside like he did many other things. But you saw him working that into his movies. Right. He beat Wong Jack Man with ground and pound, for crying out loud. I mean, you know. So obviously he saw that there was merit to it, and I think he would have gotten more involved with it as he went on.
I tell people, watch the fight with Game of Death, right?
Who was that? Kareem? You froze up there.
Huh?
Was that Kareem? You froze up there. I didn't hear what you said.
No. This is the fight before Kareem with the Hapkido Grandmaster.
Hapkido. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. I tell people, okay, take a look at how Bruce Lee moves in a grappling sequence, and then make up your mind thereafter. You know, I don't tell them what to think or whatever, but you see him throw, you see him counter a takedown, and there's something else that he does. And I go, just take a look at that. Just watch him move.
Look at it again. Yeah, I don't remember being. It's really difficult because all that stuff is scripted. So anybody can look like a superstar, but you can also be pretty well informed by what even they. Well, I was going to say you can be pretty well informed by what they pretend to know how to do. You know, if you take, for instance, you know, there Keanu Reeves, for instance. You can tell the guy's done some training. He knows how to hit the throws. He knows how to hit the submissions. He hits them smoothly, right? Compared to plenty of other people who've tried to do that stuff on screen. It looks like dog poop. So.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, bless her heart. Renee Russo in one of them Lethal Weapon movies.
Right.
You know, back then, because Horian Gracie was an advisor and part choreographer for the first Lethal Weapon. Yes. Right. And so that was part of Hollywood's dalliance in well, I mean, Hollywood has always enjoyed putting martial art into stuff, but I think that was the beginning of an era where martial arts started to become a fixture almost in action movies,
in major movies.
Yeah, right. And so that's when I noticed that what they would do is, if you wanted an actor or actress to seem like they knew how to fight, you'd make them front kick or crescent kick.
Right.
Okay. But forget side kick, right? Forget roundhouse kick or whatever.
Right.
Because that needed real skill.
Right. Anybody can flip their foot up, you know, and look like they can throw a kick.
So that's what I had I theorized that's what they would do. So you mentioned Bruce Lee passing away at age 32, going on 33, and that.
Oh, I said 33 because I have no idea what's going on.
That came up in the other famous discussion about the continued evolution of Jeet Kune Do, right? So now, like you said, you. Let me see if I can find it, because I did make a note about something that you said. So while I look for it, just answer this question, right? Okay. Does trapping work?
No. Trapping does not work.
Okay, you're supposed to give me enough time, right, to find.
I can pontificate if you'd like.
Yes, please do.
If someone can just show me a pak sao to a lop sao in any real fight ever on video, I will begin to change my mind. But most everything anybody's ever shown me has been still photos of someone parrying a punch like a boxer does, right? That is not trapping. That's a parry. Right?
I have a picture of Manny Pacquiao, right? He's got his left glove on top of his opponent's cross wrist like this, right? Yeah. And then he's got the vertical fist.
The vertical fist
in his face. Now, if you come in when that happens, and that's what you see, you go, that looks like Pak Sao Lap Sao. It looks, I swear to you,
Right.
because of the whole.
I've seen the picture.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right?
I've seen the picture, yeah.
So if somebody was to hold that up as evidence that trapping works, how would you argue against that?
I would tell them that since Manny Pacquiao has never trained in trapping, it must be so darn easy to do that nobody has any need to train it. You might as well train walking. Have you ever trained to walk since you were 2 years old? Like, you know, look, there are plenty of people out there who train trapping a lot, who can, Billy Brown, I'll just call him out right now. Billy Brown, that's a big gorilla of a guy. That guy could beat me up. I have no doubt we'd have a good Donnybrook, and he's a big, solid guy, and he could beat me up. I don't think he could beat me up because he knows trapping. I think he could beat me up because he's a big, strong dude.
Right.
He may prove me wrong. He'll be the first one that's ever done it, but he may prove me right. He may come out and Pak to a lop my head off. Good for him.
Yeah.
But I've just never seen, trapping is 100% legal in boxing, kickboxing, pancrase, shoot fighting, MMA, Sancho, right? All that stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody uses trapping. Muay Thai, nobody uses trapping.
Well, so, or do we need to have an expanded look? An expanded, do we need to expand our thinking on what constitutes trapping?
Maybe. Yes.
Yes,
maybe. Because I can do a clinch seminar for you, and you will be amazed at how much it looks like trapping, which really kind of annoys me a little bit because I've been saying trapping doesn't work for so long. But once you get into clinch fighting, and once you get into you know, pushing people up against a cage, grappling, you know, dealing with wrist control and things like that. Things can begin to look a little bit like trapping, but they're not going to look like this. They're going to look different.
All right, let's play this game. If I tell you that the classical Jeet Kune Do definition of trapping is the temporary immobilization of the opponent's limb.
Yes.
Okay.
That changes things completely.
Okay.
But that's, you can't take that definition and apply it to the way people are training trapping. I just believe that people are spending way too much time training a skill that is not applicable in any way approaching how they're actually training it in a it's not applicable in a real fight the way they're training it. So I don't know why they're training it that way. It has to come out in sparring that you can't use it that way. I've never seen it. I've never seen footage, sparring or otherwise, ever in my life where anything looked like trapping. Not the way it's trained.
Okay.
Right. Parry a jab and parry a cross. Maybe parry a jab, cross, jab. Maybe parry a jab, parry a cross, cover and wrap up the hook. Yeah, okay, that obviously works. A lot of people do that. But man, a lot of this stuff right here, man, this stuff right. Let me get in the camera, guys. You know this stuff. You know this is not working when you spar, man. It's not working. Stop. I mean, look, if it brings you joy, please do it.
Well, see, okay, yeah.
But my thing is, I just, the people that argue that it's very applicable to fighting, you'll just have to show me one instance of where.
Well, it might be a different type of fighting.
Different type of fighting than what, Dwight? There's fighting and there's not fighting.
It might be because there is footage. There's black and white footage. For example, I think it's Bruce Lee and Taki Kimura doing the classic Pak Sao Lap Sao or double Lap Sao drill, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know that at some point, that's how it was trained. You know, the whole high outside reference point thing is how it was trained.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's that, like we were just talking about, when people talk or think about what was done back then, that they do not apply historical context today? You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So if we did train it like this, the high outside reference point, back then, maybe there was a valid reason for that. But that was back then, and this is now.
Somewhat like, you know, the old boxers back in the day, right? They would toe the line. So, I mean, things were done differently, yeah, for various reasons, right? There's lots of, you know, kind of historical context to breaking boards and flying kicks and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, if you do it because you like doing it, man, power to you.
Yeah.
You know, whatever gets you out of the bed in the morning, whatever gets you trained, it's fine with me. I just, when people start talking about it, working in fights, I just, I take exception to it, because I take issue with people training, teaching. I take exception to people teaching things to people that do not work.
Mm-hmm.
And telling them that it works and that it will save their life. I that offends me. Okay, that offends me.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I said, no, that's all I have to say on the matter.
Okay.
Unless you want to ask me another question about
Well, I'm going to ask you about because maybe you're alluding to these type of people, because this is a direct quote of yours. People angling for notoriety.
Okay. Yes. Yes. There are those fellas. And look, trapping looks cool, man.
Right.
Trapping looks cool.
It does.
Trapping is some cool looking stuff. Like I said, I don't, I can see why people would want to practice it a little bit. I could see why you'd want to be able to do it just so you could demonstrate it. And it's very unique. Nothing is quite as cool as trapping because it's so unique. So when you can show something like that looks so different than most everything else you're going to find it. I mean, Wing Chun looks way cooler than boxing. Trapping looks way cooler than boxing. Boxing just looks like a lot of hard work. You know, you out there punching stuff. Trapping looks cool.
So maybe then the secret to success is to blend Wing Chun with boxing. Aren't you glad you've signed up for this?
I am genuinely glad I signed up for this. No, you're not going to do it to me, Dwight. I've said enough. I've said enough. There's plenty of people out there with a case of diaper rash right now, so we're not going to do it anymore.
You run a professional school. You got to have curriculum. You got to have material.
I certainly do. Now you're on to something. Now you're on to something. Expand that old curriculum. Give them a few. Give them a few. You know, wing. What do you call a wing? What do you call a kata in a Chinese system? I don't even know what that's called.
That's Hyun.
Hin?
Hyun.
Hyun?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Hyun.
Hyun?
I could be wrong. Yeah.
Hey, throw some of that in. Throw some of that in.
Yeah. But since we are talking about the school, what the heck is a gray belt?
A gray belt. A gray belt means that you can. Well, I'm not going to go into my curriculum. A gray belt. My curriculum is it's top secret. But I mean, there's top secret.
Okay.
Yeah, a gray belt just, it's just a stepping stone, man. Look, once upon a time in MMA, if you wanted to know if you were good, you got into a cage fight.
Mhm.
A gray belt is a belt on the way to black belt that informs you what you need to work on and informs me what I need to help you work on.
Mhm.
That's it. And there's a specific number of belts for a specific reason, and gray belt's one of those belts.
Okay. Okay.
Gray belt is a dingy white belt.
Right. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I get it. I get it. Okay. I don't need you to detail every aspect of your curriculum, but I would like you to, because I always ask this of the people who run a professional establishment. Give me an idea of the guideline, the operating principles or major guidelines behind your curriculum design and development.
Well, it's twofold, I guess you could say. One is just purely student development, and knowing how sophisticated a technique they can digest at that point in their training. So part of the belt system and the curriculum are married, and they're completely intertwined. The way I teach it,
Yeah.
You, to some degree, we emphasize certain positions and techniques at certain belt levels as you go up. You're exposed to all of them, but these are the ones you really need to work on at this point. For instance, just as a having nothing to do with my curriculum, because my curriculum's top secret.
Right.
But if you were a white belt in boxing, the first thing you need to work on is your stance and footwork, right? Maybe the next thing at gray belt you need to work on is you need to develop a jab, right? Or maybe you need to develop, look, I haven't thought this through. Maybe you need to develop distance control or something like that. So the curriculum helps. The curriculum and the belt system is organized in such a way that in a digestible fashion, the student is able to work on the kinds of things that they need to work on at that point in their training. When you're it's a little difficult. I guess most traditional styles are set up this way, right? Similar to what I've been talking about. You're not expected to know jump, spinning, flying, such and such is right until you're not expected to be able to do that until you're higher up in the curriculum, and it's the same thing. And then the other way of thinking about it, to be honest, once I started thinking about trying to make money teaching martial arts, I had to try to think about how to try to use the curriculum to retain students rather than expose them to really high level technique, and make them feel like they couldn't do it. Like, man, I'm never going to get this,
Okay. Are you saying you had to learn how to not expose them to too much too soon?
Yes. Or at least expose them to it, maybe, but not expect them. Not to beat them to death with it. Yeah, don't beat them to death with it. Right. Expose them to it because it's like, oh, that's a really cool looking thing. Like, hey, yes, it is cool, and if you can do it tomorrow, good for you. But if you can't, good news.
Right.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
It's not a big deal. It won't be a big deal for a couple of years.
You used the term a few minutes ago, sophisticated technique. I don't know if when we're talking Jeet Kune Do, we're supposed to use the term sophisticated, since Jeet Kune Do is all about simplicity.
Hey, the straight lead is pretty darn sophisticated. Okay. Pretty darn sophisticated. The footwork's pretty darn sophisticated. Very simple, but I mean, you guys, everybody knows the rest, right? Simple is not easy, etc.
Right.
And you know,
Yeah. So okay. So even though the curriculum is top secret, let me ask you this:
sure.
if I asked you, okay, teen class, what time's your teen class on Wednesday?
Teens train with adults at 6 p.m.
Okay. All right. So teen class Wednesday, 6 p.m. Second week of November, the first Wednesday in the second week of November. What are you going to be teaching? Would you be able to go to a place in your
I got it right now.
book? Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I
It's that well organized.
yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. We need more of that in JKD.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, that's problematic in every martial art. You know, I once upon a time, and Rodney could do a better job of probably storytelling and etc. You really need to have him on the podcast one of these days.
You think I haven't tried?
he's a hard guy to pin down. But once upon a time, I would have, for instance, 46-year-old guy who works at the steel plant down the road. His 2 teenage sons, his girlfriend, 36 years old, her son, 11, William Walker, 20-something-year-old undefeated MMA fighter, and his mom's boyfriend, about my age, and a gorilla, 200 plus pounds, and that's who I have show up for class that day.
They would all be in the same class.
They're all in the same class. Figure it out, Zane.
Wow.
So it'd be right. I'd be like, okay,
yeah,
grab some mitts, and while you're locating them, I'm going to try to figure out what the heck I'm going to have these people doing.
right.
So, it was problematic. Of course, I didn't have enough students back then. I didn't have enough students back then to break up classes or anything like that. It was just whoever showed up, and I did the best I could. I had some very loyal students, but I had a lot of people come and go. Because the first day would be, jab, cross, curl under the right hand, cross hook, angle out this way, hook kick, whatever, you know what I mean? And you got this poor guy going, what's this? Show me the stance again, And I'm like, sure, whatever. What's your name again? Whatever, don't worry about it. I don't care what your name is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way the training was back then. It was very different. There's no money made, nothing like that. But went. I was doing it because I loved doing it. So,
yeah. Do you think, knowing what you know now, you could return to a situation where that motley crew of 6 or 7 people are in class, and you would have a methodology that could serve them all at the same time?
No, I really, honestly, I feel like I did the best I could at the time with the guy I am. I did relatively well. I would take William and put him through you know, several rounds of hitting mitts and you know, maybe a grappling drill or two or something like that. And then I would tell him, okay, put your hands behind your back, get on your back. We're going to go 1 minute rounds on you. Just jump on top of him, and you can only use your legs to submit us or keep us off or whatever. And you know, the quote unquote normal, you know, regular people got to get a little work and get a little sweat in, and Will got challenged to some degree, you know, as well. And you know, whatever other fighters were there, you know, they piled in on him too, and that's the way I did pretty much all of our fighters. I would find a way to challenge them. You know, you eventually get to where you have some real studs, you know. So, you know, you get to where I couldn't spar with these guys,
right?
So,
what this is one of those open questions that has to do with your personal evolution. What's a big takeaway transitioning from that stage with the Motley Crew to now, where you've got the kids class and you've got the teens training in the adult class and what have you, but everything is everything's separated, so to speak, you know, and organized. What's a major takeaway from that?
One of the main ones, you can't let fighters train with regular people. You can't. It's not a good idea. Organization, you know, having a curriculum, having a ranking system of some kind, is a really important tool for, particularly for kids, for retention. People, like I was saying, once upon a time, people get into a cage fight. You want to figure out if you were good at quote unquote MMA, or boxing. You get into a cage fight. One of the reasons, you know, that I think the traditional martial arts held so much value for kids is the belt system. They didn't have to go get their teeth kicked in or whatever. They got an orange belt, you know. And so for these regular people who don't want to get into a cage fight, having a system of ranking of some kind, a measuring stick that doesn't involve concussions, you know, because these people want to go to work the next day, is important. It's important for, I've signed a lot of students by telling them, adult students specifically, by telling them, I don't train fighters. You're not going to come in here and leave with a headache every day.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
There's probably plenty more if I had time to think about it, but those are the main ones.
So somebody wants to pick an argument with you that the second that you start using a ranking system, and the second that you start organizing, it's no longer Jeet Kune Do.
It's not.
Okay. Because
well, to my line of thinking, I mean, to be clear, I'm not giving belts in Jeet Kune Do. Right. But to my line of thinking, you know, belts don't exist in Jeet Kune Do, and any rank in Jeet Kune Do kind of has to be, you know, there has to be some lineage to it. There has to be some, so I think you have to be real careful about giving out rank in Jeet Kune Do. There has to be some credibility to it. But as far as what I take your question to be is pertaining to what I'm doing specifically, and my ranks are not Jeet Kune Do ranks.
Yeah. So actually, no, it's a more involved question than that. So okay, let me not rephrase. Let me start again. What role does Jeet Kune Do play in the running of an operation of your school?
Well, I tend to run every technique through kind of a filter. Is it show or is it go? And JKD to me, if you take out the trapping,
What?
is all go.
Okay.
So
Oh man.
JKD's all go. And so all of my techniques are bread and butter techniques that you're going to find working in any fight sport competition out there. We're hitting double legs and single legs. We're hitting simple judo trips. We're jab, cross, hook, uppercut, overhand, shovel hook, round kick, teep, side kick, etc. I mix and match. I try to inform my students about, a teep. You can split hairs, of course, real easily, but a teep is a front kick. A front kick is basically a teep. We can split hairs there real easy and talk about the differences between the two. But I try to give them a little bit of information on. I don't want them to be too terribly ignorant about terms and stuff like that, like front kick. What's a front kick? I don't want them to, you know what I mean? I don't want them to be, or a teep for that matter. I don't want them to not know what that is. All of the stuff I'm teaching is going to be found in high level competition. It's going to be found on YouTube. It's going to be found working in self-defense situations, stuff like that. It's all bread and butter stuff. There's no seminar techniques, no demonstration techniques.
So that is then.
There's more to it though, Dwight. I pepper in, there's the concepts, okay? Concepts such as stop hitting, concepts such as broken rhythm, concepts such as distance control, etc., are peppered throughout the curriculum.
Yeah.
And of course, all of my ideas on those subjects are 99% influenced by JKD. Right. So it's definitely sprinkled throughout the curriculum.
I thought you weren't qualified to answer the question about the evolution of JKD, because I think what you just described there is how JKD in your life and in your school has evolved.
Yes. Hey, I can only speak to how it has informed and involved in my life. I can't talk about anybody else or anything else. But
do you think that any of us out there should be talking about how Jeet Kune Do should evolve in anybody else's experience other than our own?
Should no, probably should not. But yeah.
Right. Okay. An easy question.
Mm-hmm.
And give me something that I can use tomorrow morning in the park with my kids. How do you pressure test a kid?
Sparring, okay, but a happy medium, somewhere between. I explain it like this to the kids. Look, you have to have good sparring energy, which is somewhere between a dead fish bobblehead, right, who just stands there like a punching bag or like a throwing dummy on the ground, and trying to commit murder. Somewhere in between the two, right? We're not having death matches.
Have you ever had a little attempted murderer join your school?
I have. Listen to me right now, Dwight. I have two kids, two 7-year-olds in my 8 to 12 class because they're too savage for the 5 to 7-year-old class. They're cousins.
Yeah.
And they beat the crap out of each other. Their dad is on the floor as safety 90% for them, because every time I turn my back on one of them, they're knocking each other's heads. They're crow hopping at each other, trying to knock each other's heads off. That's the extreme one extreme, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I've definitely seen some pretty aggressive kids, some kids who really like to get after it.
Oh my God.
Um, buddy of mine has got a couple of girls, not related, but a couple of girls, maybe about 10 years old or so, who are just absolute savages. Matter of fact, he's got a 15-year-old girl probably who has made teenage boys quit because she beat him up so bad.
Wow. Yeah.
So I mean, that's just the story of sparring for everybody, though.
Did I
But,
ever tell you? Did I ever tell you that Jorge Masvidal trained with me when he was 10 years old?
no.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
man, that is cool. What was he like? You
Now,
remember?
no, no. Here's the thing. I don't remember at
Oh,
all.
wow.
Right.
Yeah.
I never put two and two together. So, which means that he didn't spend long enough for me to be able to claim him in any. I
Right.
can name drop, but I can't claim him in any
Right.
form or fashion. But
Yeah.
yeah, a good another student of mine who is a childhood friend of. I mean, they're still friends here in Miami, and we ran into each other recently. And he told me, he goes, yeah, he goes, Jorge was there with me. And this
Wow.
kid, Alec, yeah, I trained him off and on for like 15 years or something. Right.
Wow.
So yeah, so he told me that. So I was like, oh, okay. I'll drop that name at some
Yeah.
point to impress people.
Hey, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. That guy's legit, man. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
One question I thought you were going to ask me, Dwight, had something to do with how. Ah, dang it.
Well,
Had something to do with how I made a comment that I had begun to look into sports like kickboxing, boxing, Muay Thai, etc., to fill in the gaps, or maybe to pick up where I left off with Ted Wong and Rodney. And I thought, because I thought after I'd made that comment that you had at that point said, hey, we need to do another podcast about this. So I
yes.
apparently got the quote wrong.
No. But see, here's the thing, right? See, you've already answered that question.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You see,
Well, I was going to go into some different stuff, but that's fine.
yeah,
If I've answered it for you, that's good enough for me.
you've already answered that question, because I actually, let me see if I can find it. No, because what we were talking about was the whole. I think there were two things that we got involved in. One was the continued evolution of JKD, and that's where you had talked about, if people set up in Jeet Kune Do barriers to people's continued development, right? That's not something that you were in favor of. So here's what you said. I think we can all agree that boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, karate, taekwondo have evolved over the centuries by incorporating techniques or principles from other styles, or by refining things to better address certain problems. Footwork in karate and taekwondo is much better now than it was when Bruce Lee was alive, right? The founders of these sports and arts are long dead. Does that make any evolution disrespectful? Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
It sounds very wise too when it's said in your voice. It sounds very wise.
But it's your words, right? You see? So yeah, so when you talked about that, and I think I don't have that here. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Okay. I haven't added new techniques, just new ideas and strategies. Are there new valid techniques to even add? If the techniques are valid, aka necessary and effective, but not found in JKD, are we not duty bound to at least train and teach them? Your words.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. When you say it, it sounds amazing.
But see, I read it your words, and I said, you got to come back on the dialogues.
You know, about that, I often think about, you know, I started listening to the words of different coaches, high level coaches, Rick Rufus and Dwayne Bang Ludwig and Trevor Whitman and John Winklejohn and Greg Jackson and Faraz Zahabi, all these MMA coaches, Teddy Atlas. There's lots of other, you know, boxing coaches, etc. But particularly the MMA coaches strike me because I'm more into MMA, and B, it's more like what I do. But I started listening to them and watching their videos and stuff like that, and it struck me that I didn't have some, and I'll explain what the knowledge is, but I didn't have the knowledge I didn't have the knowledge that Rodney did. Rodney has a lot of knowledge of like that, in that, like a good strategy technique wise to shut down the right hand. Right. And this is something in styles, quote unquote, that are not sport oriented that I think they lack a little bit. Not in JKD, the way we practiced it was a highly offensive art. We didn't so much worry about how to shut down their stuff, where I'm worried about how to throw my stuff. You know, not a lot of thought was given into how to safely block a round kick to the body over and over again. Right. You got this savage who just, for whatever, he won't go away and he keeps just kicking the crap out of your body.
Okay.
Not a lot of training went into that. And of course, once we got into competing, we started realizing like, well, no, I did anyway. Rodney's, like I said, Rodney's got a lot more extensive knowledge about this stuff than I do. But I started realizing like, crap, I don't know that stuff. You know, I was always worried about doing my damage. And look, sometimes I like to use the analogy about Jeremy Gordon, you know, a much more physically gifted person than myself. If I was to fight someone like that, defense better be on my mind, because I'm going to be catching a lot of offense from that dude.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've got to have some strategies on how to deal with that, or he's going to dispatch me, man, pretty quick. I mean, he hits hard. He's way faster than me. He's longer. He's just more physically gifted. So I had to start thinking about, okay, how do I field this offense from other people who are more physically talented than me, particularly as I get older, but also just in MMA. You know, we had some athletes who were quite athletic, and we had some athletes who were grinders. You know, these guys were not particularly fast or strong. Didn't even necessarily look like fighters.
Right.
But they were grinders. You know, and we kind of had to figure out how do we get this guy, you know, defensively, rather than just smashing these pads and worry about all the damage he's going to do. We're going to have to figure out how to get this guy to defend properly, or he's going to get his arms broken, etc. And that's not something that, in my experience,
right, and
Ted Wong really covered as extensively.
And that was because the approach was, this is an offensive art. The structure of this is geared more towards being offensive.
Yes. I mean, if am I wrong in thinking that? I mean, Bruce Lee,
well,
spoke of it a few times, right? And I think it's kind of I've heard several instructors talk about how,
yeah,
you know, it's a very streamlined offensive. There's not a whole lot of like, check this kick or block this and then throw this. It's like, no, smash this.
But you know what? Ted Lukai, on one of his videos, he said something like, even though there is an emphasis on attack in Jeet Kune Do, it's indirect attack. It's a lot of indirect attack. You see? Now, when I heard that, my understanding of that was, okay, yes, I do attack you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I move on you first.
Right. No, to be clear, there's a lot of counterattack. There's a lot of, I mean, there's
okay.
the defense is worked into the offense, right? We're hitting on
Right.
angles. I'm moving my head offline, but look, that doesn't always work. Sometimes the hands have to be up. Sometimes I'm just not fast enough.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm having to attack from such a far distance that even though I'm hitting good angles or whatever, this guy can just see me coming. I'm a short guy. I know I look huge on camera, but I'm a short guy with an embarrassing reach. You have to get down into like the 125-pound weight class to find guys with a reach like mine. I've got these tiny little T-Rex arms. So
yeah, but with them arms, how many push-ups was it you were cranking out the other day?
I have no idea.
Didn't I see a video of you? Was it a push-up challenge or something?
Probably I've done a few of those. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I can do a few push-ups, but I'm only pushing up about 8 inches. So it's not fair.
Okay.
But sometimes that's the pinnacle of defense, right? You hit as you're defending, you're moving offline, etc. But sometimes it's just not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the attributes aren't there, or sometimes your opponent's attributes are too much to overcome. Their eyes are too quick, their hands are too quick, the distance is too much, etc. So you've got to, and of course the talking heads would say, well, you need to train more. Buddy, I've trained all I can train. Okay. I've trained all I can train. I am past my prime. The pinnacle has been reached in terms of attributes in this old body. So, at some point I just had to start, keeping my hands up a little bit more. I had to start learning how to mitigate damage rather than evade it, and teach others how to do that as well. So, in listening and looking at those coaches and stuff, because I didn't have access to Rodney anymore. Rodney lives hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes away, and our schedules don't match up. Even if I had an hour and 20 minutes to drive down there, our schedules don't match up particularly well. So I had to kind of inform myself with what the good sport oriented strategies are. How do I shut down this right hand? How do I deal with this guy who kicks my legs constantly? How do I deal with this guy who keeps getting double underhooks on me? How do I, things like that, like different ways of doing it other than just get better. Because sometimes you're as good as you are right now. So right now you need to figure out how to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
what's the status at your school now? I mean, you guys are fully open.
Yes.
What kind of restrictions do you have to operate under? Any?
Yes. I mean, we're technically an exempt activity, but we're taking, precautions. I mean, nobody, we're checking temperatures. We're not allowing people with any type of symptoms. If you sneeze, if you got the sniffles or whatever, get your butt out of here.
Right.
We prefer parents drop their kids off. That way there's just less exposure, but we're not having to train in masks or anything. So that's nice. And I do tell people when they sign up, when they come in for a trial or introductory lesson or to talk to us or anything, if you have any concern about COVID whatsoever, turn right back around and leave, because this is not the spot for you.
Yeah. All right. So let's start to wrap this up. What's going on here?
I don't quite know why I did it, but I just sat down one afternoon or evening or whatever and started scribbling around, and just whatever came out of my hand was what I ended up doing. I just scribbled around and figured it out.
What?
That's a young Donald Trump right there.
That But okay, so this is the result of somebody who just sat down and started scribbling, or is this somebody
Yeah.
who's scribbled a lot
No,
before?
no, no. I've scribbled. I used to draw a lot. I'm a comic book nerd. Probably my number two passion, other than martial arts, is comic books. And
Ah,
I used to draw a lot when I was a kid. And
so
I used to write short stories and stuff too.
really,
Yeah, I used to write short stories about mostly about fighting, mostly about, like some goofy situation at a gas station where a guy gets mugged or something and ends up killing some poor bastard.
interesting.
Stuff like that. I just
Yeah.
had that stuff in my head, so I just wrote it down or whatever. So,
Hey, you should probably look into that again.
you know,
Yeah.
it's a neat outlet. It is kind of a cool outlet. That's the first time I've drawn in probably legitimately 10 years.
Wow.
Um, and it was an interesting, I really found it interesting. I'm not much of a, Dwight, I'm not much of a philosophical person. I'm not very spiritual or
Yeah,
anything like that, but
you keep
it was
saying that.
it was a cool outlet,
Right.
it kind of just at that moment kind of quieted my mind a little bit. So it was kind of cool. I have thought about it since then,
Mhm.
and I actually got a pen out the other day to do it, and then got distracted doing
Yeah.
something else. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
you see, I mean, I think it's always cool. I think when we can go past being JKD meatheads, right?
yeah,
And show that there's another aspect to the character or something. I think,
right,
right?
right.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I'm gonna let you go. It's 7:15 on a Friday evening. I'm sure you got stuff to do.
I reckon I do. Yeah,
Right? Yeah. Go work on that ultra top secret curriculum some more.
that is set in stone.
Yeah.
That's not set in stone, but it's pretty much knocked out.
Yeah.
It's pretty much there.
All right,
But
man.
yeah,
Well, thanks
good
for coming
combo,
on.
Dwight. You bet.
I,
Thank you.
I hope it was worth your time.
Oh, absolutely,
All right.
absolutely. It's always a good time, Dwight. Anytime.
Okay, man. You take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Alrighty, people, as they say. That was episode number 150 of the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues with my good buddy Zane Isaacs. So you guys know the deal. Feel free to share, like, comment. I'll ask Zane to see if there's anything he needs to answer personally, and I'll do the same. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods and on Instagram at Dwight D. Woods. At ilovejeetkundo.com. Quick Skill Series Volume 1 is available. Let me see if I can I didn't set anything up, so I probably can't. Okay, maybe I can. So let's see. Does that work? Yeah. Okay. So if you want to support the program, you know what to do. Visit jkdrebel.com, click on the Rebel Gear link, and it'll show you all this stuff. So this T-shirt, for example, I think this is one of them that's available as a coffee mug. It's available as a hoodie. It's available as a long sleeve. It's available as a sweatshirt and all that good stuff. Available over at jkdrebel.com. Next Friday, we will be on with, let me, hang on a second. Got to find my place again. All right. So the time I'm not sure of because we will be on with Andy Norman of Defense Lab. And so it depends on what part of the world he's in next Friday. That will inform what time we start. But I think we are set up for 6 p.m., the usual time. But that's episode 151 with Andy Norman of Defense Lab. And so I will see some of you back then. Hopefully I'll see some of you next Wednesday for another issue of the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast. But until then, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off. You guys have a great weekend. Stay safe. Hope everything is normalizing in your part of the world. Talk soon.
Time, bring it, champ.
13, 14, 15, 16,
Come off your belly, Julian.
17,
Up off your belly,
18,
Julian.
19,